Good evening, Bears fans. We're here once again to preview a Fox Sports game, which is on tomorrow night, Thursday night on Fox Sports. The Bears versus the Broncos, 1993 at North Sydney Oval. A bright, sunny afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and it is another high-scoring game without giving away too much, where big crowd, sunny conditions, and some really open footy being played at that game. North Sydney running second in the comp at that stage, coming up against the Broncos with the star-studded team, or maybe not so much a star-studded team, but always a tough challenge playing the Bronx. On this particular day, we had a quite an illustrious back row in that we had David Fairley, Billy Moore, and as a matter of fact, we had a player there who forced Gary Larson onto the bench, even though he might have been playing front row that day. And he's been kind enough to join us tonight to preview this game. Can I say good day to the one and only Pod the God, Craig Wilson? How are you, mate?
Good, thanks, Flo. How you doing? G'day to all you Bears fans out there. Looking forward to the preview.
Thanks for joining us, mate. If we, I love what you're wearing. You got the gear, and I think that's the jersey that we wore on that particular day against the Bronx. I see you've got the tapered version nowadays.
Yeah, the jumpers are tapered these days, so North's a bit ahead of its time, and as you can see, it's tapered a little bit for me, so I thought I'd put it on.
Love it. Mate, I think back and I think about, well, it's hard to recollect that particular game, and we've had a sneak look at the footage, but I think about your contribution to the club and how you came into the club as a young ball-playing back rower. And it must have been tough, given that there were lots of star-studded big names ahead of you in that position. Yet you still had an impact on the club, playing over 100 games for the Bears and really, while not starting some games, but really coming off the bench and having that super sub impact.
It's funny because I was a Cronulla junior, as we've spoken about, and I played my first year at North, and it was funny because Daisy and Billy were a year younger than I was, and in my second year when I went in to play second grade with a few of the guys in that strong era where we had second grade, about 6 games in I did my right knee, and then I came back the following year, and then 4 games in I did my left knee. So I actually had a couple of years where I'd had my knees done, and then the end of '89, Billy and Daisy and those guys went through and won the grand final, and said I had to come back through and start all over again. So, in the first 3 years, a couple of them were pretty disrupted, but I always felt a bit of loyalty to the club for persevering, but keeping me going, giving me the opportunity to come back, and because in those days it was one of those things. If you got sort of serious injury, it was sort of like sometimes you got cast aside. So I'd have 2 in 2 years. I was pretty grateful to the club, so I thought, well, they've been pretty loyal, so that's one of the reasons I sort of stayed around for as long as I could.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. You had an impact and you were loyal, and I think just added that little bit of sort of panache, I guess, to the back row with a kicking game and a passing game and an ability to read the game when you come on the field and take advantage, I guess, of what was in front of you. But on this particular day, you did start the match wearing the number 11. Usually it was number 41 we got used to seeing on your back there, but it was good to see the number 11 on that day. We played the Broncos at North Sydney Oval. We came up against a fairly, as I said, a good team, not a star-studded team. Let me just roll through the lineup. North Sydney, we had Glenn Lydiard at fullback. The Lids, where's Lids? David Hall, Chris Caruana, John MacArthur, Darryl Halligan. Myself, Noel Solomon at halfback. Big Gavin Jones, Tony Ray, Mario Fenech, Craig Wilson, David Fairley, Billy Moore there as well. And then on the bench, Gary Larson, Josh Stewart, Matt Toshak. I guess Gary was more a front rower then with Josh. So he came on as impact in the middle. And then for the Broncos, you've got Paul Hoff, Brett Plowman, Julian O'Neill, Willie Morganson, Kieran Meyer, Kevin Walters, Alan Langer, and in the front row, Glenn Lazarus, Trevor Gilmister, and Mark Hone, Alan Cann, Terry Madison, John Plath, Peter Ryan, Scott Blacker, Darren Plowman. So, pretty not the best Broncos lineup, but it was a big game. We had a plan going into that match. What were your recollections of that plan in that week?
I remember looking at and going through, as you used to do all the previews and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking the mindset was we had to score points. And I know they had some changes late because of Origin, which is how Larry come to sort of be having backed up and he played the way he played. So I sort of knew early I was going to start. And that was one of the things Pete just said, look, we just want to play some footy. And I think even in the game, you see Billy, he wasn't accustomed to necessarily ball playing, but he started to pop a few short balls and Mario. And it was one of those things where once everybody got on board, it was a good brand of footy and blokes enjoyed it. So, and that was what the mindset was. And I said they had a couple of changes, but they still had if you look at that pack, it was an all Origin pack. I think every one of their players played Origin. And, with Alfie and Kevy, you weren't really sure they were always going to threaten you. So, and that was pretty much it. We just thought, well, if we take our chances or we try and create them, you never know what's going to happen. So we thought if we attacked early, you might as well, the best form of defence was attack. So that's the way we went in. And I remember Pete saying, look, you just want to, play what you see and do your best and just play with plenty of enthusiasm. So that's where it all sort of started from, I think.
Mate, you were one of the best at playing what you saw. And I think you're right. We were expansive and we moved the ball a little bit. We're hitting the edges. We were, playing those short sides, and it was another dimension to our game. That the critics were really taking note of our. Well, it's mentioned during the broadcast that we hadn't scored many tries. We were unable to attack. So do you feel that there was pressure on you to come out and actually add that bit of element to us where, we want to get a bit creative?
Oh, yes and no. I think it was just a difference in the way I used to play football compared to, a few other guys that we had at the club. But I think people forget the fact that was Pete's first year as a first grade coach in '93. We'd sort of been through the Wiz era where it was pretty, high percentage completions, kick and big man and all that sort of stuff. And Pete sort of used to use the ball a little bit more. I mean, as I said, he coached reserve grade for a couple of years there, where we had a really good side and we had some good players, and he let us play that attacking style of football. And I think it was just a matter of time before it sort of everybody settled into a new coach, new style, new system, and that was always going to take a bit of time. But really, when you look back on it, to be where we were second going in there with people critical of how we were playing, it probably speaks more about the group as a group of guys and how we defended and all that sort of stuff. So, it's just one of those things where we just had to take a bit of time getting used to, and everybody had to find their role and find their position and it just sort of gel from there.
You mentioned defence, and and it's doing these series and looking back at some of those old games. It just amazes, not amazing me, but I'm really proud of our defence and what we did in defence. And even on that day, everyone were really physical against the Broncos, and we generally were. But there was one guy, and we've mentioned him before in previous previews, in Mario Fenech, who had this habit, and David Hall brought it out of the previous preview about he talks every time the opposition gets the ball is to give it to him. That was his favourite saying. And in this particular broadcast, you can hear him say it 2 or 3 times. Give it to him, because he couldn't quite get to the man, but he wanted to let everyone know how keen he was to, to be aggressive. But we talk about Mario Pod. Have you got something for us on him?
Oh, mate, he was a character in every sense. He was one of the most self-disciplined players you'll ever meet. I used to train with him in the off season, and he just did everything right. He was one of those guys that diet, didn't drink. He was probably ahead of his time. Really, he was the old school footballer, but with the new discipline of looking at all those things. But when he came to the club, he was said everybody used to sort of think, geez, how's he going to fit in? Because we were a young group and we used to gel really good. And his character, we thought,
how did you feel? Sorry to interrupt. How did you feel when he came to the club? Another big name back rower.
Oh, it didn't so much bother me. I said I got on good with Muzz because we actually used to sit in the corner of the shed there at North Sydney Oval and the old concrete things. I used to get in the corner, and I was only 2 spots away. So I used to see all the things that used to go on and the things they used to do to him. Blokes terrorised him at the club, as you would know. I still talk about people when they used to see him on the footy show and he'd get the shits pretty quickly and fire up, and people would say, oh, surely it's a joke. But no, that was Muzz to a T. But, mate, he was a great leader for our club, and you just learned so many little things off him, and he was infectious. As much as sometimes he became a pain in the arse, but he was infectious, Little things that the guys used to do. I remember, I don't want to give names away, but guys used to cut the bottom of his Speedos. So when he'd go to put his Speedos on, they'd come up around his chest and take him home because he still lived at home, and he'd take them home and his mum would do them up again. The boys would find him again and cut him again. And, guys put different posters up on the wall with, low sperm count, and they drew the little Muzz beard on the walls, and guys filling his bag. One of the last things he did before he left the club, he used to complain about, he was the only one that used to wash and shower, and because blokes would rush home. So some of the guys decided, we had a leader who decided to get all the soap in the world that he could collect for 3 months and threw into his bag, and Mario discovered it, and he went off his head. But it was just one of those characters, and I think he really helped a lot of the young guys, but he really, it was just a great environment in the Bears. People don't probably understand the reason we were so successful was because we were a lot of really good mates, and a lot of guys could have gone elsewhere, but, stayed for the reason the Bears, we were so close as a group, and we knew something special was going to happen, or was hopefully going to happen just around the corner.
Yeah, it's been a pretty common theme through these previews with all the guys, mate, is that we were a unit, we're a family, and we're in it together. And, that's probably a real strength of ours, and I'm sure it's carrying through nowadays, and I really appreciate you giving us your time. One thing I'll go back to in your career is that you have kicked 7 field goals, they record, over your footy career, which is a pretty good ratio given games to field goals. And, you kicked a few for the Bears, but on this particular day, we had some momentum. We were in position, in good field position on the field. And you'd had a good day. You were kicking it, you were seeing them really well. But this particular time, I think it was second or third tackle, you elected to go for the field goal. You missed it. Didn't affect the way you played, but just, what was going on? I remember being outside you going, oh, come on, man, we're on here.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things. There wouldn't have been the first game. I remember Pete Louis at different times in my career just coming up to me, and he'd just look at me and he'd just shake his head and say, you'll never learn. You're just dumb. And that was another one of those moments. But I just...
Creative.
You get caught up, you get excited, you think to yourself, oh, well, we're down here. And I said, and I remember just talking during the week, thinking every time we get down there, we just got to come away with points. I just thought, well, I'll get myself on the score chart.
That's what I thought. What I thought. But
back then you couldn't get. There wasn't as much gambling, so the point didn't really matter.
It didn't matter. You had an awesome game. I think if you looked at Meter's game, there was a couple of times you broke through the middle of the field, set up a couple of tries. So I reckon without having the stats in front of me, I reckon you would have gone close to 150, 180 metres that day, which is enormous.
Mate, you look back in it too, and anyone, the guys will talk about it. Those games at Bear Park back in those days when the crowd was there, it was a Sunday afternoon. It was just an environment and a really good place to play footy. And again, I was talking about before, you look at all the guys we had in that squad, just to be around. And it's probably a bit like you listen to guys talk about Melbourne these days. A lot of guys sacrifice everything to stay at Melbourne because it's a winning club and they're so tight. And I think that's what the Bears were like. There's opportunities over a number of years I could have left and gone somewhere else to play more footy. But as I said, it was just an environment you wanted to be in. We were winning. We had a really good culture. And, that era, I think, one or two little things had it gone our way. We could have, potentially played in grand finals in 91, 94 and or 96. So, I suppose it is what it is. But, it was that environment. It was great to enjoy and be a part of.
And it sure was. And it's good to see you've got a little keepsake from those days, mate. Is there anything else you keep on hand nowadays, just in case you feel like taking a hit up or?
Oh yeah, the only thing I keep on hand these days, I used to relive the old memories. I don't know whether you can see the
Jim Beam bottle and
the
Jack Daniels.
Just a bit of that. That's probably the only thing I keep on hand these days. But no, I've still got.
Didn't I see a mouth guard out earlier?
I did, but I'm not allowed to put it on.
You're not. You've been banned. It's going viral.
I've still got all my jumpers, and I've kept them over time and different things. They're good to look back on. I've got a young bloke now who occasionally wears some of them to footy, and people look at you and go, "What the hell is that?" And these old games that you see on Fox and that, the retro jumpers, some of them are really good. I still like the traditional red one with the black. With the North Leagues one, there was one of the first ones we had and was probably the favourite, which is the more traditional Bears one.
Yeah.
But no, and I still see a lot of the guys around. We still catch up, and as I said, it was just an environment in those years there where we were so close, and that's the way we played our football, regardless of who was on the side. If you have a look, we had guys that'll play in that game, like Josh Stewart was only a young kid coming in. And, he played with Gav and Mario and Adrian Toole, I think, was still running around in 93. You had Matty Toshak. We had Spotty and Chris Caruana played in that game. And it's just, I don't know who was there. Lids got an opportunity to play when someone else was injured. Might have been Conno or Paul Conlon or one of those guys that was injured and all that sort of stuff. So we had a really good, strong squad. And it didn't so matter who had the opportunity or who stepped up. It was just an environment where the attitude was, listen, we're here. Let's just get the 2 points and go home and enjoy what we do.
100%, mate. That's awesome. And you know what? That still stays true today. And as you say, we all still get together. We still have a strong bond and a strong unit and really appreciate, you coming on tonight to reflect a little bit on that game in 1993. And, during these times, it's good for us. It's important that we communicate to our fans, Pod. So appreciate that you've lent the time and spent the time to be able to preview this match. One of which, Dave Fairley got man of the match, but, I reckon Craig Wilson was a very, very close second.
I wasn't going to say, but I actually got one. I got the radio ones. I got a McKee. I think back in those days, you were lucky to get a McKee to drill and send something else. So I got 2 radio awards, but
nice.
Daisy was phenomenal. It wasn't so much what he did; it was some of the defence you'll see in this game. Daisy hits, and they just stay hitting.
Yeah.
I think that game was a good collection of things. I remember David Hall. He makes a break coming into the game, late in the game, out of nothing, which really turned momentum around. And then, Tony Ray, the short-legged, long-bodied man, he bobs up on the scene, supports quite well. And different guys do different things. Spotty, who's not you wouldn't put him, he's not in the Mal Meninga size of player, but he just does some things that really make a difference. So I think everybody did something, and even Big Gav Jones at different times he'd sort of fought his way back in, and it was just one of those games where everything fitted in.
You talk about not having the massive body, but what about the contest between David Hall and Brett Plowman on the wing there? You've got the midget versus the giant, and Hawley's all over him with an assist from Chris Caruana. But, David Hall, he's just not the modern day winger, is he? But God, he played like a front rower.
Well, Hawley will have. He's probably dirty on you a fair bit too, Flo.
I know.
Because he considers himself a 6. Well, he used to consider himself a 6 or a 7. So to be put out on the wing, he wasn't real happy about it. But mate, he made a career out of it. He played Origin football.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of, we had guys like that who were unsung heroes, so to speak, but still played great footy when they needed them to. And it was just an environment. You were saying before how we all get together. I know it probably sounds a little bit corny, but to the guys that are playing for the Bears now, I still get down to Bear Park and watch the games and all that sort of stuff, and we get a real buzz out of watching the guys play their footy and really enjoying it. I know we link up to other NRL clubs, but anyone that takes the field in those old Bears jumpers, it's really good to watch, and we get a thrill out of the guys being successful and winning. And if they can go deep into September, it just brings back all the memories that we've had over the years. So to those guys, don't think you've forgotten from a historical point of view. We enjoy the Bears these days as much as we did back then.
Mate, appreciate that sentiment, and it's hard to get that across sometimes. And this is probably a good opportunity to get that across to the boys. But for tonight, Craig, thanks very much for your time. We'd just like to thank stonemasons and landscapers, or landscapers and stonemasons and Norse for their support of the club over this period. And stay tuned for tomorrow night. The Bears v the Broncos 1993. Craig Wilson, Pod the God. Thanks, mate. Appreciate your time.
Cheers, mate. To all the Bears fans out there, thanks for the support over the years, and we'll see you at Bear Park, hopefully in 20, if not 21 for sure.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.